big meat in your stomachs. Not too many weevils in your biscuits, I hope. Breathe in that fresh sea air. A fine day for sailing the 7 seas. Gather round, gather round. Look upon me. I am your captain. And have I always done what's right by you, boys? Haven't I always looked out for you? Led you through good times and bad? And yes, all right, I know, sometimes it's been hard, you can't odds it. But haven't we also had the lion's share of plunder and loot too, right, boys? I'm Stede Bonnet, and I charge you now. Load the guns, sharpen your swords, and raise that black mainsail, because tomorrow we fight, and tomorrow we will surely savour the taste of victory in our mouths. Who's with me? Arr! Arr! Arr, me hearties! Arr! 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 Finished. What, that speech? Don't worry about that. It was just for the benefit of my stupid crew. You are my trusted few, and you are all too aware of the dire situation that we now find ourselves in. There are two naval vessels beached but meters away. We're scuppered. The best that we can hope for now is that those bloodthirsty fools up there on deck can shoot or slash their way to victory through utter ignorance. I'll hang for this. I will surely swing in the gibbets of Port Royal for what I've done. For no judge has ever spared a pirate, not least one as famous as I, the Major Stede Bonnet. I said, the Major Stede Bonnet! Anyone ever heard of me? Plantation owner, born with a silver spoon in my mouth, aristocrat, heir to a vast family fortune, impeccably well-dressed gentleman, but now to swing as Captain Bonnet, the most fearsome pirate in the waters of the Caribbean. Oh! How has it come to this? Caviar and fine wine, and now facing certain death, and what's worse, being branded forevermore a pirate. If only I had paid more attention to this, my adopted profession of piracy, I would have had a plan. Yes, a plan. A plan, for that is surely what is needed now. Perhaps I should pen a journal. Yes. For if indeed I am to stand before a judge, the words therein will stand as testimony to my innocence. Therefore, I need a volunteer who looks like an honest person. You, madam. Don't worry, you haven't got to do much. You can be my Samuel Pepys, my diarist. All I want you to do is record exactly the tale as I recount it to you. Is that clear? It could mean the difference between me going free or... Do you understand? Let us begin. The year 1676. My parents had just died, leaving me, poor little Stede, orphaned at 6 years old, to manage the vast Bonnet estate alone. Boo-hoo. I came of age, and of course joined the army, serving under the esteemed Barbados militia, where I attained the very dashing rank of Major. Oh yes. I then took me a wife, the Lady Mary Allenby, herself heiress to a vast family fortune, and we were happy, at least for a while, until disaster struck. For our eldest and most beloved son, Armouries, was cruelly taken from us by a ghastly disease. And so began my downfall. For the grief of our child's death sent poor Mary quite mad. Hysteria, they said. And she began to become increasingly more unpredictable, nagging at me, imposing upon me certain rules. No more fine dining. No more expensive travel. I mean, please, how is one supposed to get from A to B? And worst of all, no more gambling. I mean, at that I draw the line. I am, after all, a gentleman, most unreasonable. What's worse, I had become so distracted with my wife's ill health that I neglected my duties to the plantation. Profits began to dwindle, forcing me, madam, forcing me to become more heavily dependent on bank loans to secure our comfortable lives. Finally, so desperate was the situation in 1717 that I finally sought a cure for all my woes. A life upon the ocean wave. For I had read that in one of my reading books, sea air was beneficial to one's health. Surely, the perfect cure for my wife's hysteria. You see, always, madam, always putting other people before myself. So, I took what little money remained and began construction on my very own pirate. Don't write pirate ship, whatever you do. Let's think. Pleasure ship? Leisure vessel. Began construction on my very own leisure vessel. Upon completion, I hired what I believed to be an honest crew, boarded the ship, and we were all ready to set sail. All that remained was for my darling wife to join us aboard, and we were off. And then suddenly, something occurred quite out of the blue. Suddenly, huge and unexpected gust of wind, right, grabbed hold of the ship and literally propelled us out into the open ocean. What was I to do? My darling wife ashore, myself aboard the ship. Was I to be parted from my darling, nagging wife? Now that really would be a tragedy, wouldn't it? So, I implored the crew to turn around, but they refused. What's worse is after a few days at sea, the crew turned to me and said they were taking control of the ship. They renamed it the Revenge and said that we were going to be pirates. You see, I was forced into it, madam. Forced into piracy. They offered me a choice. Accept the captaincy, but sail under a black banner, or be killed. I mean, what sort of choice is that? I didn't much fancy being chopped up and fed to the sharks, so of course I reluctantly, under duress, accepted. Besides, I also figured if I was clever, I could use this strategic advantage by showing my allegiance to the crown and eventually leading these pirates to their death under my captaincy. You see, you've always got to find the goods as a leader. I really was a splendid sea captain. And in order for my little ruse to succeed, I, of course, needed to gain the trust of the crew. So yes, we plundered, and yes, we looted all right, didn't we, boys? Oh, but we never harmed the crews of the ships we took. On the contrary, anyone wishing to join our happy band was welcomed with open arms. And then one day, something happened which was to change the course of this story. I espied on the horizon a huge Spanish man-of-war ship heading straight towards us. Fear gripped me to my very core, for I knew if we were to engage such a vessel, death would be almost certain. And then I had a moment of pure brilliance. Brilliance that would later be recounted as stupidity. Why? Because I, Stede Bonnet, sailed us into a sea battle I knew we could never win. Stupidity? What? No. All part of my plan. For I knew that the Spanish would likely sink us ridding me of these dreadful pirates, those heinous criminals that have robbed me of my vessel, parted me from my wife, and what's worse of all, robbed my reputation as a gentleman. Did it work? No, it didn't. Failed miserably. Why? Because the blasted Spanish, despite their superiority, couldn't even sink a simple little pleasure vessel. Many of my crew were harmed that day. I myself was struck by shrapnel from a stray Spanish cannonball. I'm not going to tell you where, but derriere. Most unpleasant. But the Spanish were also harmed that day. So, if you look at it this way, did I not do the crown a service by killing the enemies of the nation? A courageous act, one might say. A courageous act, madam, that might spare one the gallows, one might also say, just putting it out there. Finally, we arrived in a nasty place called Nassau, a pirate port. I found myself in a tavern, and it was here that I met a man named Edward Teach, later to be known as the infamous pirate Blackbeard. He was a huge man, biggest man I've ever seen. Now, Edward Teach, Blackbeard, he persuaded me to take control of my pirate vessel. Well, seemed like a good idea. I mean, after all, I was still injured from my skirmish with the Spanish. So I agreed to it. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a really bad idea, because once at sea, Blackbeard seized complete control of my ship and my crew, refusing to hand the captaincy back to me. Finally, he agreed only when he had acquired a bigger vessel, which he renamed the Queen Anne's Revenge. Even then, I wasn't to be free of him. He left his lackey Richards in charge, and he was an awful man. Finally, redemption came in the form of an offer from His Royal Majesty King George I. All pirates that wished to renounce their wicked ways were to be granted pardons. To my utter surprise, both Blackbeard and Richards opted in. Here was my chance. I too would accept my pardon and once more become an honest, madam, an honest privateer. I mean, after all, I still had a ship and a crew. So, off I went, knelt before the judge, received all 3 pardons, headed back to port, only to find Blackbeard had disappeared with my entire fleet. I'd been duped. He'd left just one vessel, mine, the Revenge, abandoned, stripped bare of supplies, and my poor crew marooned on a desert island. Revenge became my mantra. For I would hunt down Blackbeard to the ends of the earth for what he'd done to me. But I needed a seaworthy ship. Fortunately, I still had some somewhat shady connections. Don't write that down. And I called them in, and they hated Blackbeard more than me. So we were able to get the ship repaired, and off we went. It was anchors away. Only I didn't account for the weather. Hurricanes! The Caribbean is notorious for it. We got absolutely battered by a storm and were forced to seek refuge in a secluded estuary, but we weren't the only ones. Unfortunately, 2 huge naval vessels followed us. They had the same idea. Very quickly, I recognised them to be under the command of Colonel Rhett, an infamous sea captain who was charged with hunting down pirates. Colonel Rhett, it's me, Stede Bonnet. I've been pardoned. Pardoned. Sail on. But he opened fire on us. Clearly, news of my pardon was yet to reach his ears. And that's where you find me here today, in this perilous position. For if I am to rely on my lousy crew, it is likely that we will not succeed. They could not fight their way out of a paper bag. Therefore, madam, you are my only hope. For the words that you have written will surely form the basis of my defence. So come along, let's have a look. Let's see how well you've done. You look very, very intelligent, so I'm hoping you've done a good job. Let's see what you've put. 1676. Dead parents, very good. Bonnet estate. This is actually not bad. You've written quite an essay here, haven't you? Right, okay. You have mentioned the word pirate more than I'd like. Oh dear. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think I should be pardoned and return to being the honourable aristocrat, Major Stede Bonnet? Or should I hang as a pirate captain, Captain Bonnet? What do you think? Hang? Thank you very much. No, I don't like where this is going. Well,
I pardon you.
if all else fails, always have a backup plan. We'll blow up the ship, jump overboard, swim to shore, and pretend deny all knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.